And welcome. This is a special surf report, and obviously you can read the title, When Will the Chaos End? If you're watching this video before, say, mid-December 2020, then you're probably wondering, when does the chaos start? That might be a better question. But as you're going to see, the astrology for this next few months is eye-watering, to say the least. There's a lot of squares. And so the background to this story, to this video, is that we're seeing an unprecedented events in the sky. Some of those events were showing up in the early Revolutionary War time period in America, 1770s-ish. And that's going to be the Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn in Capricorn. And we're having that same energy now. But what we've also seen, what I've noticed doing these weekly surf reports, is that there's always been a square to that energy. And if you've got Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn together, especially in Capricorn, which is very goal-oriented, you in essence have a positive or optimistic, that's the Jupiter side, an optimistic transformation, inner power, that's the Pluto side, of the way things have always been, which is the Saturn. Saturn likes the status quo. Well, all that is getting erupted, and it's very goal-oriented, but we have squares. Astrological square puts a lot of pressure on that. And so what I've noticed just doing these energy reports, we seem to always have pressure on that three. It can't just be a positive transformation of the way things have always been. It has to be conflicted. Well, I decided to do some investigation on when does the square end on this triplet formation, Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter. And what I found was eye-watering. We're going to be looking at the astrology of the eclipses in end of November into December. We have a solar eclipse. We're going to be looking at that. And then we're going to be looking at the electoral process and the dates. It is amazing what we're going to find out here. And we're in search of, as the time of this recording, yeah, there's been some chaos in the world, okay? But wait until you see the astrology going forward. And then the question is going to be, when does that chaos end? That too. So you've got the question marks at the end here, obviously starting November 2020, just because I'm doing this video here. But when does it all end? And so that's what we're going to answer before we begin. If you're seeing this for the first time, I'm Chris McCleary, National Dream Center, and we started over on YouTube. We're going to continue to do YouTube, knowing that the censorship, but also down. We had YouTube going down recently. I'm going to start it on BitChute. So if you're subscribed or on YouTube, make sure you stop now, go over to BitChute, and subscribe over there. And that way I'm going to upload videos to both sides. And that way, if one goes down or being censored on one, just hop on over to the other and get your weekly update. All right, with that, let's go ahead and get started next. All right, and as promised, now the goal isn't to get into deep into the astrology on this. This is just kind of a broad scope, and the answer is, when do the squares end? Okay. All right. So let's look at, from when we first get my focus pen on. All right, here we are on a lunar eclipse, November 30th, Central Time. It's in 3:28 a.m. This is 2020, obviously. And you've got the sun in Sagittarius. Again, I don't want to go through the whole litany here, but these are important points. You've got the full moon, that's a lunar eclipse, pretty much over the North Node. Not at the time, but very shortly after. The moon whips around here pretty quick. This is a big impact on our future, as the North Node is our future. And so that's indicated in Gemini. Gemini is very connected to Mercury, Mercury being the ruler of Gemini. And so the moon, this lunar eclipse, is very impressed by Mercury and Gemini. Why is that important? Well, from a standpoint of the alternative versions of Mercury, the archetype is in Scorpio. So Mercury can be communication and mental thinking, but it can also be travel. So you've got vindictiveness, Scorpio, depth, darkness. You've got vindictive travel. That's Mercury, or that could be one of the things in Mercury. I'm sorry. Yeah, Mercury in Scorpio could be vindictive travel. What's happening or proposed to happen on or around November 30th? Well, the truckers are supposedly planning on doing a strike either on the 29th or the 30th. That's going to be a huge impact on, or it could be a huge impact on our life. But you look at also Mercury's got an opportunity sextile over to what we talked about before, the Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn. And that's our positive transformation of the way things have always been. But Mercury making this vindictive travel has an opportunity with the transformation. So that's pretty cool. The part of fortune and Mercury, Mars are together. We also have Black Moon Lilith and scary Uranus with change and insight and eccentricism. But Black Moon Lilith is also, they're sort of kind of the same archetype, but the different gender. Black Moon Lilith could be the female version of Uranus. It's the unexpected. It's the untamed. It's you thought you knew what you were talking about. So it's kind of scary. Those two people, entities together with ego having to adjust. So there's a lot going on. It's a big impact on our future. And you have out in the real world already some people planning some vindictive travel. So there could be some chaos there, especially with Mars square Pluto. That's conflict right there, folks. All right, but this is nothing compared to what you're going to see. Let's move on to the next eclipse. That is the solar eclipse on December 14th at 10:15 a.m. We have, by definition, the part of fortune right on the ascendant. But look at all these planets all together. The new moon is required for an eclipse, but it has to be in the same piece of sky, obviously, for that eclipse to even happen. I don't think in the northern America that you're going to see, or North America, you're going to see any of the eclipse, but I could be wrong. That wasn't the intent of this, but you're starting to see a few more squares. Don't worry, this gets a heck of a lot more chaotic, but in terms of chaos, that is the eclipse. The eclipse energy is pretty chaotic. You've got in Sagittarius, the moon and sun together, new moon, eclipse. Now, some people say this energy and the lunar eclipse is not just your standard energy around that time, plus or minus 24 hours. It's more like 6 months. And then other people suggest that if you go to every new moon at this exact 23 degrees in the same zodiacal sign, that you're going to have like a return to that sort of energy. This is a stamp for that particular time. And you can go back in your chart and see what's happening in your life at the last time, this new moon. So this is a big energy that puts a blueprint on our lives. And it's pretty chaotic because we've got the past in here. That's the South Node. We've got your mind and communication and travel is together with the past but new moon. So there's a contradiction already there. Then you've got Saturn square Uranus, and technically Uranus and Black Moon Lilith are together. So this is very, very disruptive. A square to Saturn. This is going to be the main theme for the rest of our report. You're going to see Saturn square Uranus in a lot of these frames. So I'll talk about this archetype now. And so right on this side where my cursor is, Jupiter and Saturn together is more of an optimistic view of the status quo, of government. It's a positive sort of perception there, or it's moving in that direction. But now we've got a conflict developing, we've got pressure developing from change. So it's being disrupted. And this is going to be the start of, or the seed of, a lot of chaos. This energy can be chaotic, the solar eclipse anyway. And it's a stamp. It's the Sagittarius stamp. Pluto also with its square to Mars. Oh, the squares are just happening. So what's happened? Is there anything special happening with this kind of a seeded chaos? I won't call this all out chaos yet, because watch, just watch. But what's happening on the 14th? All right, the Electoral College is supposed to convene and certify their votes. Interesting date, huh? Well, there's also something that's going to happen. Now, look, this is when the squares really begin. So we're just talking about 2 days after the Electoral College votes. This is when Saturn goes into Aquarius. So now Saturn is the ancient ruler of Aquarius, first of all. And so technically he's feeling at home. But, Aquarius is very much independent, freedom, eccentric sometimes, inventors. It's a revolution. So it's very interesting that Saturn used to be the ruler, and still is in some people's view, still the ruler of Aquarius. Some people view Aquarius as having two rulers, Saturn and Uranus. Well, if you remember what I talked about, Saturn square Uranus. So you've got the two rulers square to each other. Holy crap. But not to mention all these other squares. Now, the squares automatically mean conflict? Not necessarily, but there's contention there. They're not getting along. So Uranus is making change that Saturn, the planet of stability and foundation, can't stand it. And then vice versa. And Uranus can't stand that Saturn doesn't want to budge. So there's a huge conflict there. And the neat thing is if Saturn is going to Saturn's going to get influence to the sign that he's in, and this is Aquarius. So very collective minded, but very individual. So kind of a paradox. It's ironic there that Aquarians tend to have more of a collective view, but very much honor their own freedom, their individuality. So they can see their individual positive nature. They can see if they're self-aware, but they honor that individuality. And when it's taken away from them, that doesn't bode well. So that's a pretty cool thing for Saturn, if anything, is going to be forced to move towards freedom. And we've got the moon in the mix, which adds to all these squares. This is, in my opinion, a very disruptive time. Saturn goes into kind of like his clothes are coming off, kind of, and that doesn't feel good. So Saturn kind of feels vulnerable here, and it doesn't want to change, obviously. But Uranus and Black Moon Lilith, which are pretty much apart right now, but in that same piece of sky. Mars also making a square to the positive transformation of government. So in other words, it doesn't feel like it's a positive transformation, certainly. And this sort of is an unprecedented level of squares, by the way. I went back sometime, and I'm sure they exist. I just didn't go back far enough. I just didn't have time. So anyway, this is big. This is some chaos happening. All we have left is some stale trines and some sextiles with Venus. So maybe some finance changes or some hidden peace happens with this positive transformation, but it's going to be hard to find it. The major energy here is pressure. It's pressure to change, pressure to stay the same, and pressure for Saturn to figure out how to feel adapting to his new freedom. All right. So a lot of chaos here. Then shortly after, this is the 19th of December, still a lot of squares. And this is still not the worst of the squares, by the way. Now Uranus and Black Moon Lilith are pretty much together in the same piece of sky, and Mars getting closer to Uranus. Now you have Jupiter going into Aquarius. So these two are pretty much on top of each other, Jupiter and Saturn. They're getting further and further away from Pluto. Unfortunately, they're going to be separate before any of the squares end on this. Now, that's not a bad thing. Let me throw in a little bit of philosophy. There's no such thing as good or bad alignments. It's an energy. So what if these squares are immense, massive pressure on our positive transformation of the way things have always been? I like that view, and it doesn't have to be all out conflict, but let's be realistic. It sort of looks that way. So that's the 19th. Now let's move into the winter solstice. We have even more squares. And Black Moon Lilith, Uranus still together. That's a lot of chaos. Mars moving closer to both of them. We have Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn still together technically, with Pluto being on the edge. But look at all the squares. So that was December 21st, winter solstice, and then we've got Christmas. On Christmas, you've got quite a few squares. Folks, this still isn't the worst of the squares. But my point is, I wanted to show these dates. Obviously, Christmas may not be a very pleasant experience. You've got a square with Venus over to Neptune. This is going to last a few days. And that, the reason I point this out on Christmas, we tend to spend our family together. Family is going to be all about Venus. And it's goes against our dreams. It goes against our wants, our yearnings. There's pressure there. Pressure, so it's not what it looks like. And you've got this massive contention here with Mars getting closer and closer to Uranus and Black Moon Lilith. So not looking pretty. Then we have a full moon. Before we end out 2020, you've got a chaotic full moon, which is in Cancer. Where do your emotions want to be when you're in Cancer? Probably just want to be at home. Could there be like a lockdown sort of scenario there? I don't know. I can't predict that. But that's the energy associated with full moon and in Cancer. Probably a desire to be at home. Why would we be wanting to be home? Well, Black Moon Lilith and Uranus still putting out change. Mars getting closer and closer to that Uranus. And that's going to be very disruptive when Mars, this is going to be total chaos when Mars passes Black Moon Lilith and Uranus. Watch out. Plus all these squares over to the positive transformation of government. All right, so we have all that to look forward to at the end of December. And now we get into 2021. Here's New Year's Day. Welcome to 2021. We have a massive T-square, multiple. Now T-squares, for if you're new, is sort of a trap. It's a trap feeling, and it's when you have two squares in an opposition that are in equal sides, two 90 degrees away from each other, and then an opposition here. And it makes sort of a trap feeling. It's like you damned if you do, damned if you don't. And it's this massive change, this unexpected energy, right as Mars gets into this area. Let's see, 6 plus. So we are just now inside of an orb with Mars and Uranus. All right. So lots of yang and lots of fight and warriorness in this disruptive energy of Black Moon Lilith and Uranus. And that's the trap. And it's going to be hard to get out of that because there's not much else here. All right. So welcome to 2021. That looks like chaos to me. Now, here's where we maximize our squares. Look at all those squares. Unprecedented. Unprecedented. What day is this? January 20th? That's Inauguration Day. Now, some people are saying that it might go to the House of Representatives. I think that happens either on January 19th or January 20th. I don't know if it goes to the House. I think it goes on that day. Massive chaos. All right. Just look at, there's nothing else going in the sky except for Venus now has an opportunity to dream. And this is going to be your escape route that day. Neptune and Pisces just escaping what's happening on TV. By the way, TV will probably be exaggerated or maybe totally wrong. Who knows? Maybe this is the blackout day where we get re-educated on what's really happening in the world. Who knows? Now, so here's where, this is why I'm doing this video. It's when does the chaos end? In other words, the question I was more specifically looking for was, when do the squares end, particularly to the positive transformation of the way things have always been? So I zoomed my software and, out through the days, the heavy squares continue. And this is just the end of February, so it's lighter, and it looks like it's going to be the end, right? So you got Uranus, square, Saturn, and it looks like it's going to be just dying out, and then we're good. Nope, not so fast. Guess what? Saturn goes into soon. Before this square ends, Saturn goes into retrograde and makes that square basically alive again. And we keep doing that. Saturn will go twice in retrograde and then stay in Aquarius until 2023. So in other words, as Uranus is so slow through the sky, this square is going to be around for a long time. But it is a lot more peaceful in the sky, at least in the astrology. I can't vouch for what's actually going to happen in the world. And in fact, I wanted to include this positivity, February 27th. It happens to be one of my daughter's birthday. So good day for her, grand Earth trine, wonderful. With Pluto and Mars, no less. These are the power punches of the planets in combination with the emotions. So the material world feels good on February 27th, but the square technically is still there. So then we go into May 2021 in search of our answer. When's this square going to end? And you see this is where Saturn goes station, and it's going to go in retrograde. So it's this square is going to get stronger. Unfortunately, as we zoom out to July 4th, we have a massive T-square for our energy, and Mars and Venus are together. We have Black Moon, Lilith, Moon, and Uranus together. So the emotional change is happening here. And then Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. I just want to be free. I'm returning to the way things always have been, which is freedom. That's what America was standing on. And it's a T-square. So very contentious, very trapped feeling. Everyone's going to feel this. Saturn opposed Mars. Great. Fighting for hopefully the way things have always been because it's retrograde in Aquarius, very free oriented. So it's going to be contentious, but it could have a great outcome. Now, the squares are going to lighten over time, but they continue without any sort of break. So as you can see, I went ahead and zoomed all the way to July 4th, 2022, and we still see Uranus square Saturn. Saturn is in its second retrograde here. So keeps making this square stronger. Ultimately, the answer to our square question, you have to go all the way out to December 26th, 2022, before you see any square disappear from the sky. That to me is unbelievable because I've been doing surf reports for quite some time, and there's lots of days that I've done reports where there's no squares. So yeah, it is common to have squares in the sky, but in particular, that one where we have the status quo versus change is basically going to be there for years. All right. So, just so you know, even though, and this looks like a very peaceful sky, by the way, this is the day after Christmas, 2022. So you can put that on your calendar. This should be one of the best end of years, maybe ever. It's very peaceful. Black Moon Lilith is over in Cancer all by herself. And anyway, So not want to spend too much time there, but Saturn is going to be in Aquarius because he goes retrograde 2 times, and he's going to be there until March 7th, 2023. So we have Saturn is going to conform to freedom. That status quo is going to be stamped on that sense of freedom will be stamped on the status quo by March 27, 2023. I know that sounds like a long time, but it takes a while to strip away the control grid that has been taking away our freedoms. All right. So that's what's going to be happening throughout these years. So here are our lessons. The chaos, pretty much mid-December, with these eclipses especially as kind of the seeds to the chaos, all the way to mid-February 2021, this is the big trouble. This is the massive amounts of squares. You saw those. Look, you've got, this is the mid-December. The squares are really starting. Then you've got Inauguration Day without any other alignment other than the sextile, which you probably won't even notice with all this square there. And then that's how it climaxes. And by mid-February or end of February, it's really died down. So the chaotic energy is going to be from mid-December to maybe mid-February 2021. All right. The second insight is that expect this duality, this battle between things that have always been and change is going to be battling each other, pressurized until December 2022. Okay. And Saturn in Aquarius is going to be very profound. It's going to make a huge impression on those squares all the while. And in fact, even without the squares, it's going to make a huge contribution to the sense of freedom, which I know a lot of patriots are obviously feeling a lack of. And as more and more freedoms strip away, this alone, Saturn in Aquarius, even though Saturn wants stability, he's willing to change to get the freedom, because that's going to be also a value of his. So Saturn in Aquarius is refining our sense of freedom from December 20th to March 2023. Then finally, my other insight here is that especially going into this winter, it's going to be very paramount for you to know how to behave, how to best use this energy. It's very chaotic. So I do weekly surf reports. This is where we give out, I can't give a suggestion, a single suggestion for, a couple years time. We have to see what the energy like is compared to other things like the collective mind, the collective unconscious. Also that we do I Ching readings for this. We also look at sidereal astrology. So all those things combined, that gives us the behavioral component on a weekly basis. But overall, this is a very spiritual time, including all these years, but also the chaos that's about to probably unfold based on the astrology. So a very spiritual time, great time to edify yourself, learn as much about yourself as you can. Remember, in preparation for Saturn to go into Aquarius, this is your time to really learn about yourself so that you can be free. As Saturn frees up the collective, you're going to be able to be more about yourself. Well, you can't be yourself if you don't know anything about yourself. So pray, meditate. These are very spiritual things. And then finally, lean heavily on your tribe. And some of you are complaining that, kind of like the Civil War, where families got ripped apart because the ideologies were different there. So find your tribe. That's why I didn't say family necessarily. I don't mean ditch your family, but some of you already have. Some of you have been ditched by your family. So lean on your tribe. Find your tribe. And you can do this with probably alternative social media. Right now, Twitter is pretty much censoring anybody that's on one side. And but you have alternatives. BitChute. Look me up and look up National Dream Center on BitChute. I haven't really started on Parler. A lot of people are there, but these are just alternatives for you to develop your own tribe. It doesn't have to be social media, of course. Get out in your neighborhood, find like minds, and lean on them a lot, especially emotionally. And and probably even protecting wise as well. It's not, here's just a kind of a concept here. A lot of people are getting guns and cells of ammunition, and that's great. But in my opinion, the best thing to protect you is to be strong in your tribe. That's going to be far and away the best way to survive any sort of collapse or massive chaos. Hopefully we don't get to a civil war. I think the energy is there. So I would recommend, if the leadership is trying to not start a civil war, I think they would be best to wait until approximately February, based on this astrology of all this, wait until mid-February 2021 to really do any sort of overhaul of the massive kind. Otherwise, you've got kind of like you've got dry kindling in the sky, just waiting for a spark. And it's that sensitive from December all the way through January. January 2021 is going to be a real humdinger. Okay. So I hope this was some help to you. Thanks for your likes and shares, but above all, be safe, work on yourself, learn about yourself, and then find your tribe. Those are my biggest suggestions going forward. And we'll get through this, Patriots. Thank you. God bless.